During the 30-year reign of Johnny Carson as the king of late night, the curtains of The Tonight Show parted for thousands of guests, but only a select few possessed a level of beauty so arresting that they famously left the unflappable host momentarily speechless. Carson was known for his quick wit, his Midwestern boy charm, and a double take that could make an entire audience roar with laughter, but when it came to certain women, his admiration was palpable and often stripped away his professional veneer. While Johnny never released an official numbered ranking during his lifetime, his frequent compliments, extended segments, and the genuine awe in his voice created a legendary shortlist of women he considered the gold standard of beauty. To look back at these 8 women is to revisit a golden era of Hollywood elegance, a time when beauty was defined not just by a camera lens, but by a specific kind of magnetism, sophistication, and raw star power that Carson appreciated above all else. The first woman who undoubtedly belonged on Carson's list was the legendary Elizabeth Taylor, a woman who didn't just walk onto a stage but seemed to alter the very atmosphere of the room. By the time Taylor began appearing on The Tonight Show, she was already the definitive icon of Hollywood's golden age, carrying with her the weight of cinematic history and a personal life that fascinated the globe. Carson often spoke of her with a reverence that bordered on the sacred, frequently referencing her violet eyes as a phenomenon of nature that no technician could ever truly replicate on screen. Their interviews were masterclasses in flirtatious respect. Johnny, usually the one in total control of the narrative, often appeared reduced to a smitten schoolboy in her presence, stumbling over his practiced monologues just to catch another glimpse of her. Taylor represented a level of untouchable beauty, the kind that commanded a room before a single word was spoken and made the high-pressure environment of late-night television feel like a private audience with royalty. For Carson, she wasn't just a movie star with a famous face. She was the personification of a level of glamour that has since vanished from the industry, and his admiration for her remained a constant, unwavering thread throughout his decades-long career. He would often mention her name in hushed tones even when she wasn't a guest, using her as the yardstick by which all other cinematic beauties were inevitably measured. Following closely in this pantheon of beauty was the Italian goddess Sophia Loren, whose presence was so formidable that Carson once famously remarked she was one of the few women whose beauty was impossible to capture on film, because the sheer scale of her magnetism was too large for a two-dimensional screen. Loren's appearances on the show were rare and highly anticipated events that felt more like state visits than talk show segments. Johnny was captivated not only by her striking, exotic features and statuesque presence but by her profound earthiness and sharp, Mediterranean intelligence. He saw in her the perfect, rare blend of international sophistication and a grounded, maternal warmth that made her seem both like a queen and a confidant. Whenever Loren was on the couch, the usual late-night banter felt elevated into something more poetic. Carson's gaze rarely left her, and his normally sharp-edged humor often softened into a gentle, admiring curiosity. He was fascinated by her story of rising from the poverty of war-torn Italy to become a global icon, seeing her beauty as an extension of her formidable character. To Carson, Loren was the ultimate proof that true beauty was an internal fire that only grew more luminous with age, and he treated every minute of her airtime as a precious commodity. In the 1970s, a new kind of beauty emerged that combined athletic prowess with classic Hollywood allure, and for Johnny Carson, Raquel Welch was the undisputed queen of that era. Welch's chemistry with Carson was electric and famously competitive, often characterized by a playful, high-energy banter where she would give as good as she got, keeping the host, and the audience, on the edge of their seats. Carson frequently complimented her not just on her legendary physique, which had made her a global pin-up, but on her tenacity and her refusal to be pigeonholed as just a pretty face in the male-dominated world of show business. He admired her strength and her sharp wit as much as her looks, often pointing out that her beauty was backed by a formidable personality that wouldn't be trifled with. Welch was a frequent guest, and each time she appeared, Carson seemed to rediscover why the world, and he himself, was so enamored with her, often commenting on how her presence seemed to invigorate the studio. He respected her as a savvy businesswoman who understood the power of her image, and their segments together were a highlight of the decade, showcasing a woman who was as intellectually sharp as she was physically stunning. Another woman who left an indelible mark on Johnny was the incomparable Ann-Margret, whose red hair and explosive talent made her a recurring favorite on the show. Often referred to as the female Elvis, she possessed a raw, kittenish energy and a triple-threat talent that Carson found absolutely intoxicating. Their segments together are some of the most cherished in The Tonight Show archives, filled with long, meaningful looks and a shared sense of genuine fun that felt remarkably unscripted for television. Ann-Margret's beauty was uniquely dynamic. It was inextricably tied to her movement, her voice, and her sheer joy as a performer. Carson often praised her inner glow, a quality he found exceedingly rare in the jaded landscape of Hollywood. She had a way of making the massive, impersonal stage of the NBC studio feel like an intimate living room, and Johnny's genuine affection for her was visible to millions of viewers, often manifesting in his gentle ribbing and protective stance. Her ability to transition from a shy, soft-spoken interviewee to a powerhouse performer in a matter of seconds never failed to leave Carson in awe, making her a permanent and beloved fixture in his personal hall of fame for beauty. When discussing the women who captivated Carson, one cannot overlook Angie Dickinson, who occupied a unique space in his life and show. Dickinson wasn't just a beautiful guest. She was a close personal friend of Johnny's off-camera, and their deep familiarity added a layer of warmth and insider humor to her many appearances. Carson often joked about his crush on her in a way that felt both playful and deeply sincere, but beneath the humor was a profound admiration for her classic, refined beauty and her legendary legs, which were a frequent, light-hearted topic of conversation that never seemed to get old. Dickinson represented the girl next door, who had successfully matured into a sophisticated woman of the world without losing her approachable charm. Her easygoing nature, her husky voice, and her razor-sharp wit made her one of Carson's favorite people to interview, as he never had to work to make the segment successful. As the late 1970s transitioned into the 1980s, Bo Derek became a cultural phenomenon that took the world by storm, and Carson was at the forefront of chronicling her rise. When she appeared on the couch following her breakout role in the film 10, the host famously remarked that the movie's title was an egregious understatement for her level of beauty. Derek's appearance was almost surreal in its symmetry and California perfection, and Carson was deeply fascinated by her sudden, meteoric ascent to global superstardom. He often interviewed her with a sense of genuine curiosity, looking past the cornrows and the beach runner image to try and understand the quiet, somewhat reserved woman behind the perfect facade. While some guests were merely passing trends of the season, Derek's impact on the era's standard of beauty was so profound that Carson frequently referenced her as the new benchmark for physical perfection for years afterward. He was fascinated by the Derek effect on the public and often discussed her with a mix of wonder and a bit of protective concern, recognizing the immense pressure that came with being labeled the most beautiful woman in the world by a fickle public.